Hey everyone, my name is Robert Newman. I am the founder of Inbound Real Estate Marketing. I am an SEO and inbound marketing specialist that has focused on residential real estate for the last 16 years. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to demystify how some of the Google algorithm changes have impacted real estate specifically. And I'm going to cover what they are in case you don't happen to know. Believe it or not, even though there's 200 changes that happen inside Google every month on average, just an average, the vast majority of them don't affect the vast majority of websites, so they're not impactful. However, there have been these core updates that have affected real estate consistently and over time. The lack of information about those real estates has led a lot of people to say that SEO is magic or black magic, just depending on what your experience has been with it. So let's just dig right into it. In February 24th of 2011, there was an update that was called Panda. Panda was designed after an engineer by the name of Navneet Panda, which was an engineer in Google. What it basically was doing was at that particular time, there were a lot of thin content sites out there like easy articles and howto.com and numerous other sites that were basically putting out really thin content. And Panda came up with a way to design a poor quality score for those specific pages. And then they improved upon Panda over time, which is what a lot of people don't understand, is that originally Panda was just aimed probably at that very specific subset of websites that was dominating the search results, that was really super thin content. And then they improved upon Panda. The overall idea behind it was Panda's goal or aim was trying to make sure that the easily identifiable things on a page, such as can you find this content someplace else, stuff like that, keyword stuffing, things of that nature, that they were caught. Back in the day, this didn't affect real estate very much, so it's almost negligible. Today, does Panda affect real estate? Yes, it does. But it mostly affects real estate in the sense of people are still putting or buying and using websites that oftentimes, like template websites that have 10, 20 pages on them that are the same pages across all of that particular real estate websites, companies, like website portfolio, like the same page on how to buy homes, as an example. And a classic SEO mistake that these companies make is they don't make those pages no follow, so they come off as duplicate content or thin content. And this ends up giving you a lower quality score across the website as a whole, mostly as it relates to user engagement. Panda, this is one of those algorithms that catches that automatically. All right. The next big update happened in April 24th of 2012 and was called Penguin. Now, Penguin was aimed at link builders. Now, links are where we get votes from other websites, which is where you put a website on a website address on these other websites. And here's the thing. People have the ability to put text over the link, which is aimed at another website. So let's just say you're reading an article and it says, go buy this soap that I'm selling here, right? You click the link and it goes someplace. Well, you'll oftentimes know that it will say the world's best soap on the link. Okay, to buy the world's best soap, you click the link. Well, Penguin is still very active, and it actively tries to make sure that these votes appear natural. And to this very day, 12 years later, there's all sorts of SEO people that do over-optimize anchor text. That's just where they're always targeting keyword because they still think that happens to work, and it actually does the exact opposite. It slows your results down. What Google does is they penalize this. I see it all the time inside real estate. I see it a lot of times in the cases of real estate agents and brokers who are trying to do their own SEO and accidentally say, because it's logical to say, like, oh, I'm going to create a link that says Pennsylvania real estate or Cranston real estate, right? And and send that text to a page that is about Cranston real estate without understanding that that is actually a spammy signal that you can send to the search engines and you can get in trouble for it. You'll get about a 20% penalty at least, and sometimes more depending on how much you've done this. Hummingbird, which happened in August 22, 2013. And by the way, for anybody who's curious, I'm using search engine land to just kind of cover the big updates. Now, they didn't cover all the updates, but I'll explain that later, all the big ones. There's one big one that they missed on this article. Now I'm going to cover it for you. So Hummingbird is keyword stuffing, low quality content. Just give me a second. Some of the ways that search engine land identifies this, it sounds like it's the same update over and over again, but that's not true. Hummingbird was one of the more impactful algorithm updates that really changed the game inside SEO, because Google started to use semantic keyword recognition. Now that's where they were basically just saying, okay, send us a signal like the page is supposed to be about, again, Cranston. But if you've written a really good page and all the content is original and people, you get good votes into that page, we will automatically assume that the page is about Cranston real estate, even though you may not have necessarily used the word Cranston real estate all over the page. It really changed the game in terms of our ability to write natural sounding pages without focusing on keywords, without keyword stuffing. It very much impacted real estate. It still impacts real estate. I see all the time people saying, oh, you know, SEO is about keywords. Not so much. SEO is really about signals, and it's mostly about high quality content. That's it. Back in the day, it was a lot about keywords, and about the only place that you need to focus on keywords these days is headers. As a matter of fact, if you over focus on keywords inside the body of your content, you will actually get penalized instead of getting rewarded. So what I found is that a lot of people have this old knowledge about SEO. It's being taught wrong. Everybody's learning it wrong. SEO is about keywords only in the sense that of tracking, like tracking your results, seeing how many keywords that your page relates to. The semantic element or parts of the algorithm are focused, are all about this Hummingbird update, and just like every other layered element, all these algorithm updates, many of them are actually separate little core algorithms that have been added into what Google's main algorithm is. So they're adding layers onto their existing algorithm, which is always about counting votes. All right, so they're just basically, all these little things are trying to get to more precise and high quality results for the end user. Now this update is a big one for real estate, and now I'm going to start getting more specific. We hit April 21st of 2015, and this is a mobile update. Now Google has really been ratcheting up the mobile part of their algorithm, and it affects about 80% of all real estate agents and brokers, maybe even more. And why do I say that? Well, this particular algorithm is saying mobile version of the page, poor mobile usability. Well, most real estate websites that are popular these days, such as Sierra Interactive, Real Estate Webmasters, they were never designed. If you have a website that is 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, you have a website where somebody wasn't thinking of building it with a mobile first intent behind it. Okay, what that means is that how does the website work on a mobile phone? Now I'm going to give an example on this is a Sierra Interactive site, okay? And the first thing that you pop up when you pop up the site is a search bar like this. I've done a lot of testing on this, and people on mobile phones, this is not very easy to use. When I click something, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see that there's all these drop downs, like very, very small on my cell phone screen. It is very hard to use. Okay, so this theory where all real estate websites have a search bar on the home page, if that translates into the mobile version of the site, what you've got is a mobile site that does not work as seamlessly as a desktop site. And mobile usage has been increasing tremendously in terms of searching specifically on real estate websites. Our business is a very mobile-focused business. What do I mean by that? People are out in their cars driving around a lot when they're thinking about real estate. They're driving through neighborhoods that they want to look at. So they get on their cell phone and they look up real estate websites. The good news for realtors is that very few people have produced better mobile experiences. The bad news for realtors is that the big companies that we love to hate have done a very good job at it, such as Zillow and Trulia and things like that. They've been changing the way that their mobile versions of their website work. The average real estate website provider, marketing companies you might hire, are not nearly as focused on it. So Sierra Interactive, like all the big guys that are making very good websites, aren't actually making great mobile websites. They're not making stuff that's designed to work great on a mobile phone. So what you see is a lot of search ranking dropping off. And you see a lot of results dropping off over time because more and more people, the average across the country right now is about 45% of people use mobile. In some markets, that number is as high as 70% when they're using their mobile phones. So while this sounds minor, it's not. Now, fortunately for everybody watching this video, the mobile penalty for not getting this right is about 10%. Unfortunately for everybody, as far as I can tell, Google has been ratcheting up that penalty slowly but surely over time, consistently and more thoroughly penalizing everybody that doesn't have a good mobile version of their website. Now, big brokers and people that have been spending lots of money on their website for long periods of time, they're probably not seeing the impact of this that much because they're so far out ahead of their competitor. In other words, all the other signals that Google looks at, they've got so many more of those than their average person in their marketplace that they still are dominating. That will not be the case, absolutely not be the case over time, as if they do not turn around and start to focus on the mobile version of their site. Eventually, the penalty will ratchet up. Smaller providers like me are making mobile-first websites, and eventually we will catch up to those bigger companies that have like a big lead, and they'll watch their results. It'll feel to them like their results just fell off a cliff. RankBrain. October 26, 2015. Now, RankBrain is super cool, and nobody knows how much of the search is being done, but RankBrain is officially autonomous intelligence, or AI. And Google is currently calling RankBrain the third most important ranking factor. Hold on, I'm going to pause for a second. And what Google is doing with RankBrain that we know for sure is they're able to really deeply take into the larger context, like synonyms, applied words, personal search history, and other signals that we're probably not sure of. Basically calculate those in real time and give you search results based upon those highly specific things. So how do you optimize for RankBrain? The current thought is to add contextual elements into your content. So in other words, multi-word keywords, like when you're searching for a hotel, and then you also have a little blurb about hostels, because people want to get all their information on one page. So gone are the days of short content or content that's thin. What we want to do these days is make sure that we create a really comprehensive piece of content. There are a current like huge amount of new tools like Surfer SEO coming out that are focused on basically RankBrain elements. Like, oh, if I add in a paragraph about schools on my real estate page and I hadn't talked about schools previously, all of a sudden my page might rank for 20 or 30% more keywords when it's already ranking. So comprehensive pages that are focused on syntax and what the user might be looking for become very important to Google. This very much affects real estate, okay? It makes much more sense for us to write really big pages that cover all the elements of both lifestyle and transactional. So for us, like comprehensive contextual content are probably going to cover the two sides of real estate that are most prevalent. What are those? The lifestyle of the area that we're moving to and the transactional nature of real estate. So how much does it cost to buy a home? How often do people buy homes? What's been the appreciation? Now, all of that is present on most real estate pages. Now, the lifestyle, the contextual stuff, is not present on most real estate pages, which means that the handful of people that have figured out that there's some value in doing deep contextual content are killing it. They're absolutely destroying all other real estate websites because nobody has really gotten it together that Google has figured out a way to match value to the overall needs of the searcher. So your searcher needs not just to search for a home. They need to understand the area. They want to understand the area that they're looking at. Even if you're moving across town, like I live in LA and I live in a city called Van Nuys. Well, what would be a 20-minute straight drive without traffic is usually an hour here in LA. So you might think that I'd know everything about Pasadena, which is about 17.5 miles away from me. I don't. It's a pain in the butt to drive there. So people are now looking for a lot of lifestyle information. We're not alone. Every major metro market is pretty much the same. Houston, Dallas, Orlando, Miami, it's all the same. It's hard to get from one place to another inside major metro cities. So people are looking for this contextual information, even if they happen to live fairly close to you. Now, the medic update, which I'm going to cover briefly just because it's here, affected mostly medical websites, or at least that's the current logic. Guess what? I disagree. May 4th, 2018. The medic update was also briefly called Your Money or Your Life, okay? And what that meant was if it affected your money or your life, that Google had an update that was aimed specifically at these sites. And they really started to focus in on this acronym that they had produced. Actually, I think it was a year or two earlier, which was called Expertise, Authority, and Trust. And they produce a guide that any of you can read. If you put in Google Eat, you'll discover that Google has published their Expertise and Authority and Trust guidelines. Essentially, they want somebody who is dealing with your money to have provable expertise, provable authority, provable trust. How does the medic update affect real estate? Oh, God, a lot. Now, agents and brokers and people that are taking the time to do things like get a lot of, establish a Google My Business profile, have a lot of positive reviews on that profile, make sure that somewhere they're publishing how long that they've been selling real estate, talking about that on their biography page, creating videos on YouTube that people are watching that are talking about their expertise. These things move the needle big time for real estate agents specifically and brokers as well. So this is a really big update that says it's a medic update. I am convinced that real estate fell within the Your Money or Life update. And we watched a lot of people fall behind in this because old brokers that had websites up for 20 years, they started to watch their ranking just almost disappear, mostly just because they are not publishing the ways that Google can read their authority. They are not expressing their expertise, authority, or how people trust them based on having an old website that they've never bothered to update, or they don't have a Google My Business profile. So Google can't track these things as easy. Now, maybe it didn't drop off the side of a cliff, but most likely people probably started to see like really old brokers not doing much updates, watched a slide start 3 or 4 years ago and couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. This is what it was. Bert, October 22nd of 2019. Give me a second. So we start to get into some really exciting stuff now. All right. Bert was the integration of natural language processing technology into the algorithm. Now, what does that mean? That means that Google has finally gotten to the point where they actually reward high quality content writing. So not using repetitive words, using tools like Grammarly to write your content. Once again, does this affect real estate? Oh, deeply, deeply, deeply. Gone are the days that you can have 10 or like 100 words of poorly written content about like an area. You must take your time and write deep, well-written pages that are readable not only from a human context but from the search engine's context. Now, what a search engine can read and understand is becoming, as you can tell, increasingly more accurate. The tools, the processing speed in which Google can it's not like natural language processing hasn't been here. What was lacking was Google's ability to process natural language in real time. Every time we get to a state of technology where processing speed is picking up, we are finding that Google can advance its algorithm and understand what we're writing on the page with more and more accuracy. They're also able to track in real time user signals about how the user likes the content, how many times they come back to the page, how long they stay on the page. Between their natural language processing and the user signal that they're staying on the page, Google can, with a fairly high degree of accuracy, okay, now here is the last piece of this. This article on search engine land says that number 8 is core updates 2017 to present. So what does that mean, core updates? So Google has gotten a lot more mysterious about how they're updating their search algorithm. The truth is that Google has mostly started to continuously improve all the algorithms that you guys have I've already covered in this video. They are just making all of these things better because they kind of got this stuff dialed in. And it's getting very hard to trick them out. It's getting very hard to apply gray or black hat tactics, assuming you were inclined to, which I don't know why anybody would be, but let's just say that you were trying to trick the search engines. It would be very hard to do that, and it would certainly be hard to do that consistently. There's probably a couple tactics out there that still work that you might see every once in a while that somehow have fallen through the cracks of everything I've just covered, but there's not many of them. Now, here's the one thing I strongly disagree with. There was one more major update that was called a Core Web Vitals update that deeply, deeply impacted search. Okay, Core Web Vitals update happened in June of 2021. And you can see here, right around that time, you see this? How it fell off? This is Sierra Interactive site. Now, it came back because oftentimes what Google does is they apply an update, and they do so very stringently, and then they slowly relax it based upon what they're watching happen inside the search engine. They're just like us. They're scientists. They say, oh, this is a good idea, and they throw it in the algorithm, and then they go, oh, wait a minute. All the smaller websites that can't afford to do this particular update fell off. Now, they have a lot of crazy confusing language as to what a Core Web Vitals update is. Essentially, it's how graphical elements appear, especially on mobile phones. So elements that don't appear quite right. There's actually a good example. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pick on them. I love Sierra Interactive, but there's updates that are like, they're called contentful paint updates, but what it really means is that sometimes these little graphics on your phone, they don't appear quite, right, okay? Hold on. Can't really see it. Like, little graphics are off just by the slightest bit. And if that ends up impacting the user experience, such as it's hard to click a button or the button doesn't click quite right, that's a major quality signal now for Google. So all of us who've been focused on these updates and have been trying to make sure websites are doing what Google wants them to do, that update was pretty brutal because I had to update all of my core technology and to try to make sure that the mobile version was not only good looking, but that it was basically a stable presentation inside the mobile experience. That is much harder to achieve than those, especially if you're doing individual installs of a website, whereas a lot of these guys like Sierra Interactive and KV Core they're doing cloud-based or technology where they can change all their sites at once, right? They can just go through, make one change that's going to impact all websites universally. Theoretically, that has always been a good thing. The problem is that if you're doing that, then most of your websites look like one another, and you may not have picked it up in the subtext of what I've been saying, but the chances of the user experience being really, really good on a website that looks the same as everybody else's website diminishes based upon the number of those installs that are out in the marketplace. So you can have something that was working well when you first bought it, and then stops working well because 9 other people bought it. Because now everybody's bored of what you've got, and if you haven't bothered to update it with really meaningful content specific to your website, you will watch your rankings diminish. That's why Real Geeks and Sierra Interactive and Real Estate Webmasters, it's not so much that these aren't amazing web providers, they are, but you are going to continuously watch the effectiveness of what you've purchased slowly diminish unless you're making great efforts to make a singular user experience. In other words, it all is starting to come back to great content. It's always been Google's philosophy, but identifying and managing great content that's good for a user is extremely difficult from a technology perspective when you're running an algorithm. As you can see based on these 9 updates and the ones that we may not know about, Google's getting very good at doing that, which means that instead of today being a worse time for you to focus on great content, today is probably the best time in history for real estate website owners to do well-written deep dives that are comprehensive looks at neighborhoods and subjects that matter to your individual audience. Now, there's broad subjects I can talk about, like property tax and closing costs and why live in or why relocate to, or the top 10 things you need to look at when you're getting ready to list your home. Like, these are all pretty common things. There's also unique things based on where you're at. Are you in a second home market, an oceanside town? All of a sudden, there's specific things that you can write about, such as how to protect your house from corrosion due to salt air and other things like that. So these are all subjects that today is really worth your time, because if you bought, let's say, a Real Geek site, which is great on the surface, and you're sending pay-per-click into it, and you're wondering why you never, ever, ever seem to get SEO ranking, it's probably because you've never, ever done anything unique. And you may have followed in the footsteps of other agents that are local to you, and now 4 people own Real Geeks websites, all in your same market. What do you think the individual value of that particular site is? You really are going to have to do something to make the user experience unique on that site. You're going to have to work long and hard at it so that your Real Geek site looks different than everybody else's Real Geek site and operates differently. Because then and only then do you stand a good chance to be rewarded by the search engines. So I hope everybody appreciated my little trip through history. I hope I demystified the search engines a little bit for you. If I did any of these things, please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the notification bell if you happen to be on YouTube so that you'll get notified when I put out other content like this, and I'll see you the next time.